watching the Mystical Green Beanie.
Hey, what's going on, dudes and dudettes? I am the Mystical Green Beanie, and the first thing you're noticing is that I got a brand new camera. I like the quality, and that's a major thing that's going to be different for this video as opposed to my other reviews, because I'm actually going to shoot this entire review with camera, so like my face just going to be on your screen the entire time, so I apologize in advance. Anyways, guys, welcome to my best of, worst of, spoiler-filled review for Thor Ragnarok. This is gonna be a weird movie for me to talk about because, on the one hand, this is everything that I've ever wanted in a Thor movie, but on the other, this is everything that I was afraid that the Thor franchise would turn into. So, this is a bizarre film for me, to say the least. But I will say that this is probably my favorite Marvel movie of the year. Why is there honking outside? But yeah, no, this is probably my favorite MCU movie of the year. My second favorite comic book movie of the year behind Logan. And this is just great, but also not what I wanted exactly. But yeah, anyways, without further hesitation, let's just get into it. And as always, starting off with my positives, let's talk about the best of. And starting this list off is that I feel like this movie really understands Thor. Like, it has a firm grasp on what a Thor story should be, through the lens of parody, of course, which I'll get to. But yeah, no, this movie has a firm grasp on Thor and what a Thor story should be. And, you know, arguably, the first two films did as well. But I just feel like Taika Waititi and his team really, I feel like they executed it a little better here. So that's why I think that this is probably the best example of what a Thor story should be in live action. I was also a huge fan of how this movie actually had consequences. Like, yeah, it's a comedy and all that, but shit goes down. And the events of this movie not only have consequences for Thor, they also have major consequences for the rest of the Marvel cinematic cosmic landscape. You know, Thor loses an eye. Hulk and Banner are revealed to be two separate entities with their own motivations and perspectives. Freaking Ragnarok happens and Asgard is destroyed. Like, Surtur, the fire demon from, you know, Thor, you know, comics and Norse mythology, just obliterates Asgard in its entirety. And it's just a hunk of rocks and space dust floating around in the center of whatever the life tree is called. I think Yeldinsdale or Jotunheimer or something like that. But yeah, no, it's gone. There's no more Asgard. Meanwhile, Thor has to become the new king for the surviving Asgardians, and they have to find a brand new home. Or maybe not, because in that first end credit scene, we see Thor and his vessel just run into what I assume is Thanos' ship, so Damn, that really sucks for them. But yeah, dude, the stakes were high, and not everything is wrapped up in a nice little bow like most Marvel movies, and that was really refreshing. Another thing that I absolutely loved were the fight scenes. Oh my god. The action in this movie is god tier. No pun intended. Because something that's always kind of bugged me about the MCU version of Thor is how nerfed he is. Like, Thor is the god of thunder. He is an Asgardian god. Dude should be, like, Superman level, and he's not in the MCU. Or at the very least, he wasn't as he's been depicted up to this point. And Taika Waititi just nailed it. You know, Thor is Thor, and he fights how I would assume Thor would fight in the comics. And, just to say it again, the action is god tier in this movie. It's just top notch, and this is probably the best action I've seen in a comic book movie ever. Because the fight between Hulk and Thor alone is worth the price of admission. It's it's so dope. This movie also has a really good villain. Hela is awesome. I really don't understand why a lot of people are saying that Hela was not a great villain, or that she's just there because the plot needed her to be there. And to the people who are saying that, I don't mean to be rude at all, but you either completely zoned out whenever she was on screen, or you were just actively not paying attention. Hela's whole deal is that she wants to destroy this fallacy that Asgard was built on this throne of bed and roses, and that everything was tranquil and beautiful and peaceful, when in actuality, it's not. Asgard was built on the back of blood and war and death, just like every other prospering nation. And Hela despises the fact that Odin is ashamed of Asgard's true origins, whereas she feels that they should be celebrated. And I think that's fascinating. Also, she's just a badass monster with a lot of dope lines, so yeah. Seriously, I'm not seeing why people don't like her. She's like in my top 5 Marvel villains, so I don't know. I guess I'm just stupid. I also loved Doctor Strange in this movie. He only has like 2 minutes of screen time, but those 2 minutes is everything that I wanted the entire 2 hours of the actual Doctor Strange movie to be. And I'm just glad that we finally got Doctor Strange as I wanted him on the big screen. So that was awesome. And last but not least, there's just a few small things I want to mention. First things first, I love how this movie is paced. It's a very short movie. It's like 90 minutes, but it doesn't feel like it. I didn't feel this feeling of emptiness. I felt very full. This movie takes full advantage of the time that it has, and it tells a really well-paced story. And this movie deserves a lot of props for that, because there's a lot of films in modern film history that just don't. I was also a huge fan of the score. The score was done by Mark Dinkelberg. The film was scored by Mark, and Mark did a fantastic job, because this score is fantastic, and it's very catchy, and I loved it. So, great job, Mark. You did fine. If my opinion matters to you. It probably doesn't. I don't know what I'm doing with my life now, because you are definitely not watching this video. But, good job, Mark. But yeah, those were all the things that I loved in this movie, but now let's get into some of the things that I didn't like. Let's talk about my negatives. Let's talk about the worst of. And starting this list off is some of the humor. Now, this is just a matter of taste, but I was not a fan of Dude Bro Thor, nor was I a fan of the fact that every scene ended with a joke. Every scene, and I do mean every, ended with a joke, and I was not a fan of that. And again, as I said, this movie is a parody. It is a parody of Thor, and it accomplishes its goal of being just that. But for me personally, it's just not my bag, so that's why it's on my worst of list. Also, Hela dies at the end of the movie, and that really sucks, because I loved Hela. As I said, she's one of my favorite MCU villains, and dead. Which is ironic, seeing as how she's the goddess of death. And I know there's going to be some people saying, well, maybe she's not dead. Maybe when Thor destroyed Asgard and she was there, maybe she escaped, or maybe she's reincarnated. No, honey, she's dead. She's pretty dead. Something else that I don't know how I feel about yet is the new mythology behind the hammer, because in the MCU, Hela was apparently the original wielder of Mjolnir, and then she comes across it later on in the film, and she just completely destroys it, and then Thor has to go on this whole, journey of, rediscovery and, self-discovery, and the conclusion that he comes to is that he is still Thor with or without his hammer, and that's really cool for the context of this movie's narrative, but here's the thing. That kind of spits in the face of Thor's whole comic mythology for the past 50-odd years, and that especially spits in the face of everything that's been going on with Thor in the comics for the past 5 years. Because for those of you who don't know, Jason Aaron, who's the current writer of Thor, he's been doing this thing with, the mythology of the hammer and going into its backstory, and his whole run is based around Mjolnir, and this movie kind of says, fuck that. Fuck it. Doesn't matter. Screw it, nope. Now, Thor doesn't need the hammer. He's Thor without it. Doesn't matter. Nah. And don't get me wrong, I'm not one of those guys who's like, it needs to be like the comic, or else it's not good because the comics is the end all be all. But this really alters Thor as a character fundamentally, and I'm just not sure how I feel about that myself. And finally, I am so sick and tired of the 80s. My god! And this movie is literally just an 80s throwback feel-good movie, except it doesn't feel good because I am so done with the 80s. And look, I get it. The 80s was a fantastic time to be alive. Star Wars was super popular. Terminator and Blade Runner and, Ghostbusters, those were all things that were awesome. And, Baywatch was a thing. And Reagan. And again, the 80s probably was awesome. I don't know. I wasn't there. But it is high time we move the hell on, because we have beaten that dead horse into the afterlife. But yeah, guys, that's it. Those are what I feel are the best and worst aspects of Thor Ragnarok. All in all, it's a really damn good movie. And again, this is my second favorite comic book movie of the year. But what about you? What were your thoughts? Did you like Thor Ragnarok? Did you not like it? Let me know down below in the comment section. Also, if you like this video, hit the like button, share, support the channel, and if you want to see more content like this, all you gotta do is subscribe. I'm the Mystical Green Beanie. And as always, until next time, adios, nachos, adios.
Charged up.